Marcus Cole was not born into money. He was born into a small, dusty house on the edge of Lagos, where the electricity went out every other night, and his mother cooked by candlelight. His father was a fabric trader who worked 6 days a week and still came home with barely enough. Marcus watched his father count coins on the kitchen table every Friday night, and instead of feeling sad, he felt something sharper. He felt determined. From the time he was 12 years old, Marcus woke up before everyone else. He studied when his friends played. He read books borrowed from a neighbor's shelf, books about business, about strategy, about the men who built things from nothing. He did not dream small. He did not dream of a comfortable life. He dreamed of an empire. By the time he was 22, he had started his first company out of a single rented room, with a second-hand laptop and a phone with a cracked screen. The company moved digital payments for small traders. It was not glamorous, but it worked. Within 2 years, it was profitable. Within 5 years, it had offices in 3 countries. Within 10 years, Marcus Cole had built one of the largest privately owned business groups on the African continent, a company called Cole Global, with interests in technology, real estate, and international investment. The world watched him in admiration. Magazines put his face on their covers. Universities invited him to speak. Young people across Africa pinned his photograph to their walls and said his name the way people say the name of someone they hope to become. He employed over 14,000 people. He paid their salaries on time, every single month, without fail. He was proud of that more than anything else. He had 2 people he called brothers, though they shared no blood. Damien Osei had been his first business partner, a clever and charming man who could talk anyone into anything. Kelechi Adewora was his chief financial officer, the man who understood numbers the way musicians understand notes. Marcus had brought both men up from nothing, the same way he had brought himself up. He trusted them the way a man trusts the ground beneath his feet. He was also engaged to be married. Her name was Serena Voss, and she was the daughter of a powerful Swiss banker named Conrad Voss. Serena was educated, elegant, and quietly intelligent. Marcus loved her, not with the loud and careless love of a young man, but with the steady love of someone who had finally found a person he wanted to build a life beside. He planned the wedding for the spring. He had already chosen the ring. He did not know that everything around him was a lie. It started on an ordinary Tuesday morning. Marcus was in his office on the 40th floor of his Lagos headquarters, reading a contract, when his phone rang. It was a government official he recognized. The voice on the other end was flat and careful. "Mr. Cole, I am calling to inform you that regulatory authorities have initiated a freeze on Cole Global's accounts in 3 jurisdictions. This is related to an ongoing investigation into alleged financial fraud." Marcus put the phone down slowly. He thought it was a mistake. He called his legal team. He called Kelechi. He called Damien. Kelechi's phone went straight to voicemail. Damien answered on the 3rd ring, sounded rushed, and said he was looking into it. Marcus believed him. By that evening, the story was on the news. Not a small story buried at the bottom of a page. A large story, with photographs of Marcus, with words like fraud and deception and billions. Marcus stood in his apartment watching the television, and his hands were steady, but his heart was not. By Wednesday morning, the board of Cole Global met in an emergency session. Marcus walked into the room expecting support. He found cold eyes and folded hands. The board presented documents, transaction records with his signature on them, records of transfers to offshore accounts in countries he had never visited, approvals for deals he had never seen. All of it looked real. All of it was false. But he did not know that yet, and neither did they. The vote to remove him as chief executive was 6-1. He was the one. By Thursday morning, Serena came to his apartment. She did not sit down. She placed an envelope on the table and told him she could not continue the engagement. She said she believed he was innocent, but that her family name could not be associated with what was happening. She picked up her bag. She walked to the door. She did not look back. Marcus stood in the middle of his apartment for a long time after the door closed. He looked around at the room, the leather furniture, the framed photographs, the shelf of books. All of it felt like it belonged to a different man, a man who no longer existed. Within 72 hours, he had lost his company, his position, his partner, and his name. The bank accounts were frozen. The lawyers he called had already been retained by the other side. His face was on every screen, and the word attached to it was not visionary anymore. The word was criminal. For 43 days, Marcus Cole disappeared. He checked into a small guest house in a quiet part of Lagos, under a name that was not his own. He paid cash, he spoke to almost no one. He ate simply. He slept few hours. He did not cry, not because he felt nothing, but because he knew that grief without purpose was a waste of the little energy he had left. Instead, he thought. He sat at a small wooden desk with a notebook and a pen, and he reconstructed everything. Every meeting, every conversation, every document, every phone call he could remember from the past 3 years. He built a timeline in his notebook, entry by entry, night after night, until the picture began to form. And what he saw, when the picture finally came clear, was not random misfortune. It was a plan. A long, carefully constructed plan, designed by people who had spent years pretending to love him. He understood then that Damien and Kelechi had not been his brothers. They had been his shadows, walking beside him, waiting for the right moment. He did not yet know who had paid them, but he knew they had been paid. Nobody does what they did for free. On the 44th day, there was a knock at his door. He opened it carefully, and standing in the hallway was a young woman he recognized. Her name was Zara Mensah. She had worked at Cole Global for 3 years as a junior data analyst. She was quiet, precise, and had always done her job without needing to be noticed. Marcus had approved her promotion once, though he doubted she remembered that. She was holding a small hard drive. "I kept backup copies of the internal servers before they wiped everything," she said, in a voice that did not shake. 201 CI Dawn 20119 know if it helps. But I know you did in 2019, do what they 2019 re saying. And I thought you should have this 201D. Marcus looked at her for a moment. Then he stepped aside and let her in. That was the beginning. The next 18 months were the hardest of his life, and also the most clarifying. Marcus worked in complete silence, with no office, no team, no name, and no announcement. Using funds from a personal account that even Damien and Kelechi had never known about, a small emergency reserve he had set aside years ago, out of pure instinct, he began to move. He used the data on Zara's hard drive carefully. It was not complete evidence, but it was a thread. And Marcus had always been extraordinarily good at following threads. He hired 3 people, a forensic financial analyst, a former intelligence professional, and an investigative journalist who had spent 12 years uncovering corporate corruption. He paid them well and told them only what they needed to know. He did not meet them in person for the first 4 months. At the same time, he began to build. He identified 3 small technology companies in Southeast Asia that were financially distressed but structurally sound, companies with good products, good engineers, and bad management. He acquired all 3 at very low valuations using a holding company registered under a name that meant nothing to anyone. He restructured them quietly. He installed better leadership. He was patient. He did not rush. He slept 4 hours a night. He read constantly. He ate 1 proper meal a day and worked through everything else. He was not punishing himself. He was preparing. Zara became indispensable. She had a mind that moved quickly and accurately, and she had something rarer than intelligence. She had judgment. She knew when to act and when to wait. She did not panic. She did not ask for things she did not need. She became, over those 18 months, the only person in the world that Marcus truly trusted. By the end of the 2nd year, the picture was complete. Marcus's 3-person intelligence team had reconstructed the entire operation. Damien and Kelechi had been approached 2 years before the fall by a group called Harrington Ventures, a rival investment firm backed by Conrad Voss, Serena's father. The plan was simple in design and terrifying in execution. Feed false financial records into Cole Global's internal systems, forge Marcus's signature on documents authorizing illegal transfers, and time the regulatory complaints to land all at once, from multiple countries, on the same day, so there was no room to respond. Serena had not been aware of the full plan, but her father had placed her close to Marcus intentionally, and she had been used whether she knew it or not. That was a painful thing to understand. Marcus sat with it for a long time before he filed it away and moved forward. Harrington Ventures wanted Cole Global's assets. They had assumed that once Marcus was destroyed publicly, Those assets could be acquired cheaply from a collapsing company with a ruined reputation. They were partly right. Coal Global had suffered badly, but they had not accounted for one thing: Marcus himself. 31 months after the day he was removed from his own building, an unknown holding company called AK Global Holdings made a public bid for Coal Global's most valuable asset, its Lagos-based technology infrastructure division. The bid was precise, well-funded, and impossible to ignore. The price was fair enough that rejecting it would have looked irrational. Harrington's board, struggling to manage a company they did not truly understand, accepted. Nobody knew who was behind AK Global. The financial press speculated for weeks. The company left no trails, held no press events, and issued no statements. It simply moved, quietly and effectively, the way large things move when they are not trying to be seen. 2 weeks after that acquisition closed, a package of documents arrived simultaneously at regulatory authorities in 3 countries, at the desks of 3 major international news organizations, and at the personal email addresses of every board member of Harrington Ventures. The documents were complete: bank transfers, recorded conversations, forged signature comparisons, internal communications between Damien, Kelechi, and Harrington's senior staff. Every piece of evidence was verified independently. Every piece of evidence was irrefutable. The story erupted across every business news channel in the world within 48 hours. Damien was arrested at an airport. Kelechi's assets were frozen globally before he could move them. Conrad Voss was indicted in Switzerland. Harrington Ventures lost 40% of its institutional investment in a single week, as partners raced to exit. 3 days after the documents went public, AK Global Holdings called a press conference. It was held in a glass-walled room in Lagos, and every major financial and news network in the world sent a representative. The room was full and quiet in the way rooms get quiet when everyone in them knows something significant is about to happen. The doors opened. Marcus Cole walked in. He looked different from the man in the old photographs. He was leaner. He moved more slowly and deliberately. His eyes were calm in a way they had not been before, the calm of someone who had survived something and come out on the other side, not just intact but transformed. He wore a dark suit with no tie. He sat down at the table and poured himself a glass of water before he said anything. He spoke for 12 minutes. He laid out everything clearly and without emotion. Who had planned what? How it was done? When it was done? Who had paid whom? And how the evidence had been gathered and verified. He did not raise his voice. He did not use dramatic language. He presented facts the way a builder presents plans, with precision and confidence, and the quiet authority of someone who knows exactly what they are talking about. At the end, a journalist raised her hand and asked the question everyone in the room wanted answered. "Mr. Cole, how did you survive this? How does a person come back from what happened to you?" Marcus looked at her for a moment. Then he said calmly and simply, "I decided that the man they destroyed was not the man I was going to be. I built someone better in his place." The room was silent for 3 full seconds. Then it erupted. The legal consequences for those who had wronged him were swift and total. Damien Osei was sentenced to 11 years in prison. Kelechi Adara faced trial in 2 countries and lost everything. Conrad Voss was convicted of conspiracy and fraud in a Swiss court. Harrington Ventures collapsed entirely within 8 months. Its remaining assets sold off to pay creditors. AK Global Holdings, now publicly known as Marcus Cole's company, entered a period of extraordinary growth. He rebuilt Coal Global's former divisions one by one, then expanded far beyond them. Within 3 years, he controlled assets across 4 continents. He created the Coal Foundation, which funded schools, infrastructure, and small business development across 12 African countries. Governments called him for advice. He sat at tables where heads of state once sat across from him as equals, and then, eventually, as people who needed something from him. The name the financial world gave him first appeared in a magazine headline. Nobody planned it. A journalist simply wrote what everyone had started to feel. The headline was 2 words: the Alpha King. It spread because it was accurate. Not because Marcus demanded power, but because power had a way of settling around him now, naturally and permanently, the way water finds its level. He did not love the name, but he did not deny it either. It was simply true. 2 years after his return, at a quiet ceremony in Accra, attended by 30 people, Marcus married Zara Mensah. There was no announcement beforehand. There was no press coverage. There was only a room full of people who had chosen each other honestly and known exactly what that choice meant. When a journalist finally asked Marcus about her in an interview, he answered without hesitating. She showed up at a door I was afraid to open, with a hard drive full of truth, and she asked for nothing in return. That is what loyalty actually looks like. I had spent years thinking I knew what loyalty was. She showed me I had only seen the surface of it. Zara became the chief executive of the Cole Foundation, the largest philanthropic organization on the continent. She ran it the same way she had always done everything, without noise, without theater, and with absolute effectiveness. 3 years after the day Marcus Cole walked back through that press conference door, he was invited to speak at the world's most prestigious global economic forum. He stood at the podium in front of 1,400 of the most powerful people on Earth. He spoke for 22 minutes. He had no notes. He spoke about what it means to build something with your own hands, and then watch it taken from you in 3 days. He spoke about what happens to a person in the silence after that kind of loss. He spoke about the choice that silence forces on you, to become less than you were, or to use the pain as material and build something that cannot be taken. When he finished, 1,400 people stood up. The applause lasted 4 minutes. Marcus stood at the podium and did not smile, not because he was cold, but because he had not come for applause. He had come because he believed the people in that room needed to hear something true, and he was now one of the few people in the world with both the authority and the experience to say it. He had started his life counting coins on a kitchen table in Lagos by candlelight. He had built an empire, lost it in 72 hours, disappeared into silence, and returned as something the world did not have a previous name for. He had lost people he loved and found one person worth keeping. He had been broken and had rebuilt himself, not into the man he had been, but into something sturdier, quieter, and far more powerful. The magazine covers called him the Alpha King. His employees called him Mr. Cole. His wife called him Marcus. He called himself, when he was alone and honest, simply a man who refused to stop, and that, in the end, was the only title that had ever mattered.